Oh,
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Higher Moment Mastermind. I'm Shira Lotzar. Happy to be your host today. Vern Schellender is on vacation. We'll be back in September. So we'll go ahead and kick things off. So who has a job search question? Anything about your search? And Mohammed, I'm not sure if you know that this particular call, we're only on in the job search mode. We don't actually talk about small businesses here. We're just doing just regular employment.
yeah, of course. I know.
Okay, great. All right. So
So
who has a
Shira,
question?
I have a question kind of goes against everything I had heard up until this point. I went to the Career Network Ministry on Tuesday and met with someone who said that networking is, of course, always a good idea, but that right now the name of the game is to put in as many applications as you can online because people are applying, from everywhere for these jobs. And if you
It's
don't
true.
get your application in on the first 3 days, you're probably not going to be in the consideration.
Well, so that's interesting. So let me try to break that down because there are a couple of things in that concept. Let me
Okay.
address the second part of what you said. Absolutely, there is competition like nobody's business, and let me explain why, and then I'll address the first part of what you might want to do about it. Okay, but
Okay.
absolutely, that part is unbelievably true. So what's happened is that because of COVID, right, a lot of people obviously went remote. Well, there are a lot of companies that stayed remote. We just put a period at the end of that sentence. Okay. A lot of companies, I don't know what percentage. I'm going to make up a number. I'm going to say 50%. That's just anecdotally what it feels like to me, right? So of these 50% of companies that went fully remote, what's happened is that now that when they post a job and they post it as remote, not hybrid, remote, all of a sudden they have access to everybody in the country. And depending upon their comfort level with people internationally, they could be open as well to that. Which means that the competition has gone, it's been exponential. Anecdotally, I'm going to say 10x in terms of the competition. It flooded. And I can tell you that as a recruiter, when I started doing, some searches for fully remote, companies, that's what happened. I'd post something on LinkedIn, right? Like just absolutely flooded. Now, that doesn't mean to say all the people are qualified. They're not, but we get a huge volume of response. The opposite is also true for the hybrid jobs. Opposite is true. There are so many job seekers who only want remote, don't want hybrid, that when a company is going hyper local, which means that's what hybrid is, right? You have to live in the area. The opposite is true. They get fewer candidates, you have less competition. Okay. So to the extent that you are open to staying local, your competition is going to be a lot smaller, right? If you apply to those jobs. So let me just absolutely agree with that part of the statement. Things have completely changed. And I think it's just here to stay. Sure, there will probably be more companies that go hybrid, right? Because we're just seeing a little bit of a swing in that direction. But there's a lot of companies that are going to stay, going to stay remote. Now, what do you do about that? I appreciate what the suggestion was in terms of, hey, you just gotta apply everywhere because there's just so much competition. Look, I mean, you could. How effective that's going to be, right? I mean, I can't say. Should you apply early? Sure. Okay. But the fact of the matter is that now more than ever, networking is the most important thing. Job boards have never been the way that people typically get jobs. Looking at a job board, it should be only 10, and I'm not kidding when I say this is not an exaggeration. It should only be 10% of your job search. There's always been a lot of competition with job boards, or I should say public job postings, right? Employers get overwhelmed, whether it's the exponential or not. They just get inundated with a lot of people, frankly, who are not qualified for the role. So the recruiter is just literally overwhelmed. So whether they're posting it on LinkedIn or Indeed or CareerBuilder, even on their own website, once they put it out publicly, they get swamped with tons of candidates and they have to sort them through. And that's challenging for them, which means it's very hard for them to find you. On top of which, because the technology is the way that it is, your keywords on your resume have got to match up with the job search, with the job description. Otherwise, it's very likely that you won't even be seen. There are so many impediments for you to be noticed by an employer whenever you're applying online. They're just numerous. So I never recommend that people exclusively rely on the job boards. Again, make it very, very small percentage. Could you apply to lots of things? Sure. Of course, if everybody does that, then the system's even more clogged, but that's a different story, right? It really is about networking. Now, if you see a job posting that you are really qualified for, let me emphasize that again, really qualified, not the one where you see a posting, you're like, oh, I'm really interested. Oh, that looks like a cool job. I mean, when you really look at the qualifications and they say we want A, B, and C, and you've got A, B, and C, not like a side order of B, but like really B, like when you really have it and you really can customize your resume, then you take the next step to try to find an internal champion. You go to LinkedIn, you put the name of the organization in the search bar in the upper left-hand corner, hit enter, hit the people button, and then all of a sudden you're going to see the people come up who will work for that company. You check and see, you can find the name of the CEO or the name of the hiring manager, if you can figure that part out, HR person, recruiter, anybody who's sort of in that, right, a decision maker mode. If you're first level connected, that's amazing. That's very rare. But if you can find one of those people who you're second level connected to, which that means you're going to have a first level mutual connection, you reach out to that first level mutual connection. I would do that on email, not on LinkedIn, because a lot of people don't check their LinkedIn profile. You go to email and you say, hey, John, I noticed that you're connected to Susie, who's the hiring manager or the HR or whoever. I've recently applied. Here's my application, my cover letter, resume. Would you consider forwarding my application to Susie for extra consideration? Right? That's the way to get an internal champion. And if you have multiple people in the company, send it to multiple people. Be a squeaky wheel. That's totally fine. You don't have to just send it to one person. Now, if you don't have any connections to the hiring manager, HR, recruiter, CEO, anybody else can do. It's okay. It's not as ideal, but it's fine. You have somebody in some other off department. As long as there's somebody in there that's flagging your candidacy, that's pulling your resume out of the database and saying, hey, decision maker, please take a look at this person, that increases your chances significantly. Okay. So this is all to say that, yes, you can apply to more jobs. Sure. I mean, from a statistical perspective, okay. But even then, it's really even not about that. It's really about getting noticed from amongst the crowd. And again, trying to go, if you're open to it, going to hybrid, looking for hybrid jobs as opposed to remote, because your competition is more narrow. Does that help, Carolyn?
It does help. And it made me really question the advice I was given. So
yeah, I appreciate why you brought that up. I understand the reasoning, right? Because we're all trying to navigate this whole new world of like, what do we do with the competition? And I can appreciate that somebody out there might be like, well, more competition, you just got to get out there more and hit it early. And I guess there's something to say about that. I would not say that is the advice. I would say that is a piece of advice, but the real piece of advice is about networking, customizing your resume, really being very intentional and thoughtful. And also too, if you do end up applying on LinkedIn or Indeed or any of those things, it's okay to go try, if they have a recruiter, not every company does, but if they do, to try to link in with that person. It's okay. It's okay. We recruiters, we like to link in with people. That's all right. And even if you can get that person's email address and write them directly, not a bad thing. I mean, yes, they do. They're very, very busy people. But if you take the time to follow up, right, that can be an extra step of like, hey, notice me. Hey, I'm really interested. I'm taking the time to follow up separately. I've had that happen myself if I've ever posted on LinkedIn. And by the way, as a recruiter, I only do that occasionally. I don't rely as a recruiter. I don't rely on LinkedIn for my searches. I do my own proactive networking. I go into LinkedIn's database and I proactively look for people and reach out to them, right? But LinkedIn I'll sometimes do just as a sidebar, like, by the way. But the point is that if I've ever done that, if I've ever posted a job on LinkedIn's job board and somebody actually not only applies, but they write to me personally with a nice note, whether it's an email or even through the LinkedIn job board, I'm like, I stand up, I'm like, oh, okay, this person's extra interested. They've taken the time. And then I might actually take the time to write them back, right? So that's an extra step. Helpful?
that's helpful. Can I ask a follow-up question?
Oh, sure. And then I'll go to
Other people have their hands up. That's why I was curious if I should raise my hand.
Is it connected to this question?
It is about making your resume match the job description. Is there an AI way to do that easily?
Yeah, so there is a link called JobScan, or I think is it JobScan.ai? Is that what it's called? I think they think
Oh,
that's what it is.
I've done that before. Okay, I
Yeah.
thought maybe there was a new Chat
Oh, I'm
GTP
sure there
way to
are.
rewrite your
Yeah,
resume
I haven't
with
kept
the
up with
words
them,
of
but there's
the.
all kinds of stuff out there. The JobScan one is the most
Okay,
traditional, but yeah.
okay,
If you find one, please let me know. I just haven't looked it up, but
okay.
they
I
don't
will.
use
I
anything.
will just to make
A
my
lot of things are
resume
possible.
pop more. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would, yeah, come back to the group and let
Thank
us
you.
know if there's another, tool that you found. In fact, Katie, you were nodding your head. Did you know of one? A different one?
I don't know of a specific one. I have used ChatGPT, and it was helpful. In particular with the cover letters, I would just throw in the position description, throw in my resume, say,
Right.
write me a cover letter using my strengths and this
Yeah.
job description, boom, shorten it to one page, boom, and then edit,
Right. Yeah.
And I had
And
been
with the
doing
resume, like because I think my keywords are pretty spot in already, spot on. And so I would take like the summary part at the top and say, tailor my summary just for this application. So I'm only tweaking one bit of the resume, not the whole thing.
Right. There's all kinds of tools out there we'll be continuing to use. All right,
Well, thank
Mohammed,
you.
you had a question?
Yeah, actually, I'm having two questions. The first question I'm having is like the question employer asked for, where do you see in 5 years? So for this question, so please just let me know the answer for this question, then I will go to next question.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years? I'm surprised
Yeah.
that I'm surprised that employers are still asking that question because most people don't stay that long, frankly. Most people are staying, couple years, 3 years. I would say that, we'll be honest, but I would encourage you to think about what is the level of position that you're applying for? What might be the next level above that? And that you would say, look, I'm applying for this particular role and I'm hoping to, build my skills in this particular area. I would hope to grow within the role and achieve this next level. Now, you may not know what the next level is in the company. And so you can say that, I'm looking to develop these kinds of skills and to make a contribution. And then you can even pose the question back to them and say, what might be, if I'm successful in this role, what might be the next step in this company for me to grow into, right? And you can just ask it back. So that's, I wouldn't get too specific. I would just say, these are the skills I'm focused on. What do you believe is the next level? I'd love to grow my skills to be able to advance. That's how I would answer.
Yes, Ira. Actually, yesterday was my interview, and in that, that interview was very successful, but I was not selected. But I answered in the same way you are answering me. But yeah, your answer is a bit more polished. I answered like I said that first I would like to put myself into the role, understand the role, and increase the skills according to that role, and then look for other opportunities where I can help this specific organization in other ways. So I answered like this one.
Did you have a second question, Mohammed?
Yeah, I also have second question. Is it like do employers refer do preference on the location? Like for example, yesterday for example I live in Pickering, which is very far from the company where I have to visit, which is in North York, and other candidates, 3 to 4 candidates, are living there in North York only. So do employers do like it take and cross on basis on location?
Do they analyze your candidacy based on where you live?
Yeah,
Yeah.
do they
They
make this on
Mhm.
basis of?
They absolutely can. If the job is on site, if the job is hybrid or whatever, absolutely they will. Yes, because they want to make sure that your commute is going to be realistic. I mean, absolutely they do that. Because look, if your commute, I'm making this up, okay? Let's say your commute is an hour each way. Let's just say. Most employers will say, oh, well, okay, can you handle it? If it's an hour and a half, right? Now, if it's 45 minutes or less, that's pretty normal. But anything above an hour, they're going to say, are you okay with that? because they want to make sure that you're going to stay for a long time. Because, you know, when you're a job seeker and you apply for a job and you're excited about the role, a lot of people say, oh, sure, I can handle the commute. I can go from this place to this. Guess what? 6 months later, that can get very tiring. And the employer knows that. And they know that you're probably going to come back to them in 6 months and say, oh, yeah, I just can't really do this. Or, oh, can I have more, you know, remote working? And right, they're a little bit afraid of that. So it's important to know what you really can handle. You know, are you going to take the subway? Are you like what, or maybe there's a flexible schedule where you don't have to go as much in traffic. Maybe that'll cut down on the commute. But absolutely, they are considering that when they're vetting your candidacy. Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure. Katie?
Yeah, my question is similar to Caroline, so thanks for asking that. I have been trying really hard to make sure that when I apply, or even before I apply to anything, that I can find some connection at that company. And I'm really fortunate that I have often found a lot of alumni from my university work at this place. But because I have like limited LinkedIn in-mail things, I try to just find one that might be the closest or the best fit or the most likely to, you know, connect me in the right place. Should I be like, you said, you know, be the squeaky wheel? Should I reach out to as many of them as possible?
Yeah, so let's back up just a second here. So you mentioned InMail. I want to talk about that. But before I do have a question, you said that you are connected to some alumni. When you say connected, you mean first level connected?
No, they're
They're not.
never first.
Okay.
If they were first level, that would be easy.
Good, right. Just making sure you know, you can just do the message. So yeah, so you're saying that you're connected your second levels, let's say, to, or well, let's put it this way. If you're second, let me talk about InMail. Let me back up. Okay, so as you know, and I don't know how many people know this, that when you subscribe to premium, there are several types of premium levels. Actually, the first one these days, as I recall, doesn't even give it, I don't think it even gives you any InMail. I think it's the second
it
level
does.
up.
I think it's 12 a month or something.
The first one does now? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, but it's not very many, you know, 5, 10, 12, whatever. It's not any which way. It's not a lot. You have to be very judicious. And I know that's why you're asking that question. What I would do is I would avoid InMail as much as possible. And the way to do that, frankly, Katie, is actually just to send a connection invitation and put a tiny little note in the personalized invitation. You only have 300 characters, not 300 words, 300 characters. It's not very long. It's like a couple of sentences. That's how I would do it. Then you're going to save yourself an InMail, and you can simply say, hi, Susie, you know, you and I are both alumni of the University of whatever, quickly, you know, and just say, you know, I'm whatever it is. I like to network with you because I'm applying for a job at X, or, you know, it's just a one-liner that simply explains why you're reaching out. Hopefully they will see your invitation. A lot of people don't. Hopefully they will accept. Once they accept, even if you have a question in there, like, hey, can we have a Zoom or something? Most people don't actually see the full message. Because as I'm sure you've seen yourself, when somebody writes to you through a connection invitation, you really only see the first line. You have to hit see more to see the whole thing. They might just quickly accept it without seeing that you made a request. So once they've accepted your invitation, hopefully, then respond back in a message, which of course is free, and then simply, you know, have your conversations. Hey, thanks so much for accepting my invitation. And then restate your question. Would you be open to a Zoom call? Would you, whatever it is. Okay.
Right.
But I would definitely use connections more than reserve InMails for times when you have something long to write, and it's a contact that you really, really, really want to go after. But if it's just
So
sort
I
of like,
used
hey,
it for,
yeah.
for like, there was a job I applied for, and the LinkedIn premium says, pro tip, message the recruiter directly. So I sent an InMail because that's all I've got.
Mhm.
And I basically wrote a short cover letter in the InMail. Should I just have connected and done that?
I mean, look, if it's a job that you are really gunning for and you really feel like you're qualified and like all these things line up, sure, you could send an InMail. It's not, again, as I said earlier, it's not a bad idea to connect with recruiters, by the way, not the hiring manager. It's a bit of a subtlety there. If you're
Yes.
in the job search, connect with the recruiter, because we recruiters like to connect with just about everybody. When you've applied to a job, I would not connect with the hiring manager at that point, because that'll feel a little bit too invasive. Okay.
Mhm.
You can do that beforehand if you're just networking, but not during the job search. But during the job search, you can connect with the recruiter. It's really not a problem. So that's fine. I think I would do that. The other thing too is if the job was posted on LinkedIn's job board has a button in there in the posting where you can actually write a note to the recruiter. I don't know if you know that. I don't forget what it's called, but I've received them myself. But if you do, just know that that button has some automatic language, and it says something, I can forget what it is, but it's something like, hi, recruiter, right? You know, I don't know, something excited to apply and I'm really qualified. It was something very generic. Customize it, right? That's what I would do. And plus, you know, if you can find the recruiter's email address, write them directly. Nothing wrong with that. You can push a little bit if you believe that you're really qualified. Don't just do it because you're interested. I have to keep emphasizing this because recruiters get a lot of resumes that they're not qualified. And the recruiter's responsibility is to find the unicorn. That's what hiring managers ask recruiters to do all the time. Then they're done that have the t-shirt. Why? Because they're risk averse and they don't have time to train. If, Katie, the job that you're applying for is not through a job board, it's just through networking and it's not even posted, it's part of what we call the hidden job market, then the air is very thin. Your competition is very, very low. That's different. Then you can have, you know, a relationship. You don't have to customize as much because you're being referred on your relationship is what I like to say. You are showing up before your resume. That's a totally different situation. But when you're going through the job boards, man, you are competing with everybody. That helpful?
It does. I have more questions, but someone else has their hand up. So
Okay. All right. We'll go to Karen, and then Deborah.
Hi, sure. Sorry about my camera. It's not
No worries.
working. It did come on briefly and off it went. So
Okay.
anyway, so I have found that I seem to be getting better response when I go to job fairs or do things that are networking wise.
Yeah.
So there are a couple of jobs that I'm interested in that aren't open yet, but the recruiters told me about them. What would you say the best way to keep in touch so you know when they finally post them? Other than LinkedIn, which if I'm one of thousands of people connected to them,
Yeah.
I would hope they wouldn't forget about me, but you know, there's no
Yeah,
guarantee.
they're busy, especially if it's a recruiter. When I say it that way, I mean a full-time corporate recruiter. They've got multitudes.
Right, they've got thousands of jobs, and I understand
mean,
that.
Right. Yeah. And then how many more candidates, right? So to your point, for them to think of you, keep you in mind, like say, hey, Karen, I met you at the job fair and our job is open. Like for them to remember that is going to be hard.
Right.
But in terms of keeping in touch, well, first of all, if you can get any sense from them as to the timing, that'll be a good reason to prompt. So if they say, hey, we have something coming open, and you say, any idea when? And they say, well, should be in about a month or whatever it is. Make a tickler. Reach out proactively in a month, in 6 weeks. Number one. Number two, start scanning the job boards. Keep scanning the job boards for that job because they're going to probably post it somehow, some way. They're going to either go to LinkedIn or Indeed, any of those things. So like just make a tickler and say, look, let's just scan for it. And the other thing too is that if it is a recruiter, likely than not, they're going to post it on their own website. So just keep that as a tickler too, as just keep on checking. So check their website, check the job boards. And then if they can give you any sense of timing, then, follow up with them a couple times, maybe.
All right. Thank you.
Oh, and by the way, whatever they do say on timing, you can expand it by like double because they're always aspirational, but it's like, then always there's something behind the scenes that, the hiring manager delayed or they got busy or whatever. And it's 1 month turns into 2 very fast. So just pack your patience with that.
I don't have big expectations, but I have
Yeah.
gotten interviews that way before. So
Great. Excellent.
Anyway.
Deborah?
So I This is not my question, but I put something in the chat. I had coffee with a job seeker yesterday and we were talking about tools where you compare your resume with a JD,
Yeah.
and he sent me a link. I've never used it, and he told me, he said, I think this is where you can do that. But he said I may
Okay.
be confusing it with another link. So I put it out there. It may be a tool to use, but it's not
Okay.
one I've used.
Okay.
And then my question is, thinking through this, Shara, so for context, since we're recording, I'll say I was in a job search 2-3 years ago. So I think for me, when I came into this transition, like I know how to do LinkedIn, I know how to build a resume, I know how to build a networking brief. So it's kind of like I know how to network some of these things, but I get up and when I tell my friends, I said, what I find in a job, what I'm finding in the job search, my job, I get up in the morning, I am Chief Marketing Officer of Deborah Shelby Inc. My goal today is to promote myself and use my time wisely. And I said, one of the things is I get up every day and the day can fly by. There are so many things I can be doing as a job seeker, but like really trying to discern what's the best use of my time.
Yeah.
And, and I've kind of heard the statistics. I think it's like 70% networking. I think there's a 20 and a
At
10. So
least.
I just would love for you, like, if you were with me on Monday morning and I'm planning out my week, or with any of us, and as we're thinking about like, what is the best wisdom, way to use our time. And then kind of related to this, like I've been launching a job search in August. The previous 2 times I've done it, I started in September. So one of the things right now, which is realities of people are busy, kids are going back to school, we're taking
And this
vacations.
particular week, this week in particular, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's particular. So it's like I'm in one of these like,
Right.
okay, I was laid off. I've processed my emotions. I'm ready to roll. And like I talked to a coworker yesterday, a former coworker. She's like, Deborah, I'm so sorry it took me 3 weeks to connect with you. I really care about you. And she started talking about everything in her life. And so it's just one of these, when I get up and I'm thinking like, I want to keep momentum going, but I
Yeah.
also generally think like, how do we best use our time when we're
Okay.
out there getting up and saying, market myself?
This last little thing that you said is actually the thing that I wanted to talk about. I'm glad that you mentioned it. And you said was a former colleague, right? Kind of a thing. Your best connections and the things that you want, the people that you want to pursue as much as possible, and certainly as you're getting up and going, are the people who know you, like you, and trust you. As we say, you have built relationship capital with these folks so you can make a withdrawal. These are the folks who want to help you. They are your champions. Now, I want you to think of them in 2 categories. I want you to think of them relationally, but I want you to also think about them in terms of what they do in the world. So let me just give you an example. So let's say you have somebody in your life. They're your best friend. They're your literal family member. They are a former colleague who you were really whatever, just a person. So on the one hand, that person wants to help you. And literally, they're thinking about you. They hear about something, they're throwing it your way. Okay. Unless that person actually is in your field or in your sector, or really, really, really understands what you do, that person could be very well-meaning, but not be able to help, not be as capable of helping you as somebody who is in your sector, does what you do, really understands. So on the one hand, you should be networking with your family and your best friends, and you're like, absolutely, keep that up. Keep that up. Have coffees with it, because you never know when that person, that next door neighbor, that whomever, right? Random person in your life who has nothing to do with what you do, but they love you and they want to help you. You never know when that person will meet somebody. So let me just say that. So in your job search, you definitely want to keep touch with those people, have those coffees, have those Zoom calls, whatever. And to the extent that you have people in your life, maybe they're not your best friend, but they're collegial and they get either what you do or the sector that you do it for, or preferably are in your sector or do what you do, and they're close to your profession. Those are the people who can help you the most. Why? Because they're the people who recruiters are coming to, or those are the people who hear about the job openings. Those are the people who can make quality referrals to you. I'll give you an example in my own life. Some of you know that I play in the association world very often. Okay, so trade associations those are my people. Okay, when I'm networking with a colleague in the association world, it's very easy for them often to make a good referral to me because we all get each other, right? It's just a very kind of collegial kind of thing. When it's somebody outside the sector who knows nothing about associations, in fact, they just think that I work with nonprofits. Well, yes, associations are nonprofits, but they're not charitable. It's a different thing. But they don't know that, and that's okay. They just don't know. So they'll sort of randomly refer somebody to me, like, yeah, y'all, you sort of play in that same. Oh, sure, I'll talk to the person, but they're not necessarily going to be able to make as quality of a referral because they just don't understand the sector. Okay, which is fine. But I'm mentioning that because it's the same thing with you in your job search. To the extent that you can talk to people who really understand, even someone like me, Deborah, because you're obviously you work for search firms, for executive search firms. So I get what you do, right? And I've got people in my world. In fact, please make sure to reach out to me. I might have mentioned you last week, so I know somebody at a recruiter at a search firm locally that I don't know, maybe they could, might have an opportunity. So please reach out. Her name is Tanya. So just give me a note and I'll connect you. But see what I'm saying right now. I know your sector, and because I do, I've got colleagues in that sector who could literally be right for you. But if I wasn't from the search world, I may not have, right, as strong connections. So that's one of the things that you want to do when you're focusing your time, when you're managing your time. Manage it both in terms of the relationships, but also in terms of the people who actually get what you do and can make quality referrals. That's a really, 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 really good use of your time. And to the extent that those people are one and the same, that's fantastic. The phraseology that I use, I have this concept that I call the family tree of networking: twins, siblings, first cousins, and second cousins. Now I'm going to pop in the chat a video that I have, a training video on this, but I consider a twin relationally somebody who, is going to dance at your wedding, help you move, right? Those people. I consider a sibling somebody who's collegial. Like I would be considered a sibling to you right now, right? Because you could pick up the phone. Hey, Shira, can you help me? Sure, happy to help Deborah, right? Your first kind of cousin is somebody who's a dormant relationship. Maybe you haven't talked to in a long time, but you had a warmth at some point, and you can resurrect the relationship. And then your second cousin is somebody who's, from your past, a long, long time ago, maybe, or somebody as a bare acquaintance, and you can kind of tee it up. Same thing on the professional side. A twin is somebody who does what you do. A sibling is somebody who's very, very, who really understands what you do. Your first cousin is someone who's sort of familiar with it, and your second cousin is sort of on the periphery. So if you can kind of look at it, right, like that, you can maximize your networking time by really focusing, again, as much on the twins and siblings on both columns, a little bit less on the others. Not that the others are bad, but you've got to be able to focus your time. So it's start with the people relationally that get you, love you, trust you, all that stuff. And then you can go down the path. Is that helpful?
That is helpful. And so then I think it goes back as a follow-up of like the majority, I would say it's hit, but the majority of our time really focusing in on those relationships is a good way to think about the day. Like if, in a sense of like, am I really focusing in on the people, like you call it, the twins and the siblings?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And what I'm going to do here is I'm popping in the chat this. So the link that's there is all of my job seeker videos that I've delivered to different job search groups. One of them on that list is called Accessing the Hidden Market. That is where you're going to find that whole family tree concept. Okay. So I hope that helps. And by the way, it's also very just sort of warm and fuzzy, right? Like you reach out to people who love you and they're like happy to make time for you, and it's very, very energizing, and they typically will take the time. And you can say, hey, let me strategize with you about what's going on, and be very specific with them, not only the kind of job you're looking for, but if there's certain companies that you're looking to get into, maybe they have a connection there that you're just unaware of. But those are some of the people to gin up, and then they can refer you to people, right? And that's the whole thing about networking. It's not just the people it's the people who they know, but you start with the people you know so that they can refer you to the people that they know. So always be asking your networking calls, who do you know that could benefit from hearing about me? Who do you think in your network might want to know about my skill set that might have an opportunity that where I could contribute to them? Always make it benefits them. Yes, you need to put food on the table, right? But at the end of the day, the employer is hiring you because they have some business needs to accomplish. Who in your network, Susie, right, could benefit from knowing about me? Okay. All right, Mohammed, and then Katie.
Yeah, I have just a quick question that like I am connected with an organization and I have connected with several organizations, but I really don't understand the role for that because I have recently within a week I got interviews from 2 to 3 organizations and I gave all the details, like as much details as I could, like the name of the HR manager, and I requested them to talk on the behalf of me, and I have already asked them if they could do so. So, but I haven't here, like they were unable to contact with the company for the referral. So, so I'm not understanding. Like, should I push this thing to organization or should I rely completely on myself?
Should you make sure I'm understanding? So you've already reached out to somebody at a company. You haven't heard
Mhm.
back. So you're asking, should you push it and keep nudging them or
No,
just
no.
wait?
Actually, I'm talking about organizations like the which helps to get employment. So I am reaching like I am already cleared like 3 to 4 interviews. Like I got interviews within a week, 2 to 3, and I requested organization to talk on behalf of me because they have already asked me to do so. So, all the time they were unable to contact with the company. So in that case, what should I do? Like, should I contact the company myself? Like, I would like to know my mistakes or my errors, like why I am not selected, so that I won't.
Oh, why
Yeah,
you didn't get the job. Okay, so let me address that, Maha. I'm glad you brought that up. I get that question a lot. So let me explain something to you.
yeah,
Employers are very afraid of lawsuits.
okay,
They're very afraid of lawsuits. And because of that, they don't want to explain to candidates why the person didn't get the job. Because if for some reason you misunderstand or think that you were discriminated or whatever, you could sue. And employers want to protect themselves at all costs from that. And
yeah,
so what
yeah,
they do is they don't tell you anything. On top of which, they don't want the pushback emotionally, because there are some people who there, and I'm not saying anybody on this call, okay, but there are some people who some job candidates who ask for feedback and they really think that they want to know. But as soon as the employer explains to them why they didn't get the job, then the job candidate gets very defensive. Not all the time, but sometimes that happens. And the employer does not want to deal with that kind of emotion because they made their decision and they don't want to have that kind of conversation. I'm not saying this is the right thing. I just mean they're being human beings. And so they're like, look, it could be, and it could be for a lot of reasons. It could be personality fit, culture fit, whatever. Somebody internal got the job. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why people don't get a job. Could be their job tenure, could be, I don't know, a lot of reasons. But the employer doesn't want to be held accountable for that. And they just don't say a thing. And so, your question, Katie, is there a way to ask for feedback? I wish that I had a great answer for you. I really do. I've been in this business for almost 30 years now. And it is very rare that an employer will actually give quality feedback. Occasionally they will, occasionally. And especially if it's the kind of reason that's not personal, right? If it's just, hey, we were looking for this skill set and we found somebody who had, that kind of skill set. That's an easy one. But if it's outside of that, if it's a culture fit, personality, if it's something the candidate said that the hiring manager didn't really like, they don't even want to go there. So honestly, while I appreciate people want to know, because I get this question all the time, I appreciate that you want to know. It's very rare that an employer will actually explain it to you. So I would really just leave it alone because you never know. Because look, it could be this that you were so amazing and so qualified that you were a threat to the hiring manager because they thought you were going to take their job. I don't know. It could be that there's a cultural thing. It could be that I had it happen once years ago. I did a search and we had 2 finalists, very qualified people, very qualified. But when the employer looked at the nature of the team, the employer said, you know what, we really need somebody who's going to gel with the team in this certain way. And they thought this one person would. The other person was super qualified, but that person had a personality, a type, nothing wrong with their personality. It was just that for that team at that time, the employer did not think that it was going to be the right fit. But that's not the kind of thing that you can say to a candidate. Well, I just, we needed this and you're that. That almost feels very personal. And it wasn't meant to be. It's just what that team needed at that time. So employers typically just stay away from it. And it's really hard to get detailed feedback. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Sherry, thanks a lot for Shira. Thanks for your answer. So you have given one part of my answer. The other part is like there are several governments, like there are the Durham government, Durham unemployment services, and other type of services. I don't want to take the names of services. So what are the rules for their organization? Like what should I expect from them?
Now, when you say from them, do you mean a recruiting service?
Yeah, you're right.
Okay. So a recruiting agency, headhunting firm,
Yeah,
we call staffing
exactly.
firm, we're called a lot of different things. So so first of all, don't have any expectations. That's the first thing. No expectations.
Yeah.
If you are, number one, if you are the kind of candidate who they normally recruit, I'm going to make this up. I'm going to give you an example. Let's say the recruiting firm, they only recruit for people in the finance and accounting field. Let's pretend. If you're in finance and accounting, they might proactively interview you to put you in their database. And then notice how I'm saying might, if they happen to have a search that is exactly right for you, they will reach out. You don't have to do anything. They will reach out to you. But if you are in a completely different field that they don't recruit for, they're not going to call you. They're not going to interview you. Like there's just a mismatch. Like for me, I mostly recruit in the association world. I don't recruit in the commercial real estate field. I don't recruit typically for government contractors, although I did one once, but that's not my field. So if a government contracting person came to me, nothing I can do, right? And remember that the recruiter works for the employer. They don't work for the candidate. So you have to remember that you're just in their database as one potential person that they can reach out to if they have the right opportunity. There's nothing more for you to do. You can apply. If they interview you, great. If they don't interview you right now, it might be that they just don't have the right opportunity. So for example, for someone like me, if somebody in the association sector reaches out to me, in fact, somebody did that yesterday, nothing I can do with them, right? Like I could link in with them. I can talk to them maybe, but I'm not in a position to really interview them because I don't have a search. But there are some firms that will proactively meet people even if they don't have a search. They'll actually just do a full-blown interview. Typically, that is when the recruiting firm specializes in a career vertical as opposed to an industry vertical. Here's the difference. If it's a career vertical like finance and accounting, or they recruit for marketing people, or they recruit for human resources people, up and down, they might reach out proactively and just really interview you because they get all kinds of jobs all the time up and down that career vertical. When it's an industry, it's different. So like for me, I focus on an industry. I recruit in different professions within that industry, all over the place. So it wouldn't make sense for me to proactively interview somebody who's a membership person and a marketing person and a government relations person. It's just the searches are too vast for that. So I'm the kind of recruiter that I will only reach out if the person is actually a fit for that job.
Okay.
Makes sense. It's two different things. But once you've interviewed with them or you've submitted your resume, I would just leave it alone. Deborah, you actually come from that world. Deborah is an executive assistant with search firms, with executive search firms. Deborah, do you have any best practices on your end when candidates reach out? Well, I don't know what your firms typically did.
Yeah, I think if you said it where it's like when I'm in a firm, I'm working for the client and the clients go find X, A, B, C, D, Y, whatever it is. And we're trying to find people who match for that. So if you do apply, sometimes there's places you can send a general application, but I think it's really where you want to look at it and be like what you're talking about earlier about alignment.
Yeah.
Like the last firm I was at was very heavy in fundraising. So sometimes we would get emails internally like, this person just submitted a general interest. They've been a gift officer. They've been here. So there was a really tight alignment.
Yes.
So it may be one of those things like, like I'd said, like if you're in fundraising nonprofits, I would have said, go talk to my old firm, put it in because then you're in the database,
Right.
or like the same thing, like putting it in there. But I think if you're talking unsolicited, are submitting, you really want to have that tight alignment with these are the kind of
What
jobs they do and I
do.
fit. If they
Mhm.
look at my resume, they're going to say that they match.
That's right. But even then, there's nothing more that that person really can do. You submit your
Yeah.
resume, it's in the database, that's it. Right. And if the recruiter looks in the database and there's a position that they have where there's a match, then they'll reach out to you.
Right. It's kind of one of those things I call it in a job search where it's a quick thing I do and I may or may not get a return, but I have done it if there's an alignment. Yeah.
Plant the seed. That's it.
Yeah.
Katie.
So I've had conflicting information about the salary question, the salary expectation. And my first thought is if they've posted a salary range as a hiring range on the job posting and it's okay with me, I'm applying. And if I wasn't interested based on that range, I wouldn't have applied. If I'm interested in being a little above that, I'll probably still apply anyway.
That's right.
But when I get that first phone screen call, what is your salary expectation?
Yeah.
I try so hard to not give that number, to say, I'm interested in a total offer package that is commensurate with my skills and experience and your expectations. And they just won't let it go till I give a range. And then I know I've lost the negotiation battle. And I'm a hiring manager, so I know this. But then I've sat on a webinar like this a couple of weeks ago, and a recruiter was saying, absolutely give your number. Always give your number. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. To you, someone like you who's trying to help me find a job, sure. But to the person who's on the phone screen at that institution where I'm trying to get a job, I'm not so happy about that. What are your recommendations about that
Right.
question?
So this is a passion area of mine. I have a whole speech on this, actually. And some of you have heard me give it, so I'm going to give it again. All right. So first of all, I need to back up the train and give context to your concept here, because not everybody on this call is aware of what's going on in the market with postings and all these things. So I'm going to frame it and then I'll address your question. So we have had a shift, at least in the United States. We've had a shift with what's going on in the job market as far as whether companies post salaries. So there's a trend. Okay, there's a trend now toward being it's called pay transparency, right? So you be transparent and share the posting. Not every company does it. A lot of companies don't. But there are more and more states in the union where it's required. So that's part of why you're seeing, and even the states that are not required, some employers are very progressive, DEI centric, diversity, equity, and inclusion centric, right? And they're just sort of saying, you know what, we're gonna go ahead and post. When they do that, all right. So first of all, you have to understand, number one, they can't necessarily assume that you actually saw it. Some candidates miss it. I know you'd be surprised. Don't actually see what that range is. So number one, they need to say, what's your expectation? Because they're like, did you see this? But number two, they're kind of trying to gauge where you are in that range. Now, I understand what you're talking about, Katie. From their perspective, it's, look, we want to have a sense of where the person is. And by the way, there are some states that you're not even allowed to ask that. Like I think in Colorado, Colorado and California are very progressive in this regard. And I don't think that you can. Huh?
I need to move.
Yeah, right. But in any event, there are less and less employers who are saying, what are you asking for? But some still do. And if they are if they've already posted their range, they're within their rights to do that. Here's what I would recommend in terms of a response, rather than saying, hey, I'm just, rather than not saying anything. If you legitimately feel that you are at the top of their range, say that. Okay. I'm looking for the top of the range that you posted, especially if you're looking for above the range. There is typically about a $10,000 differential in what they post and what they're actually willing to pay, about 10K-ish. Mm-hmm. So if they posted, I'm making this up, they posted 150, you really want 160, I would actually say that. I say, look, the highest you posted is 150, I'm actually looking for 160. Right? Is that something you could do? And they'll be a little squirmish and like, well, all right, they know. But as far as anything lower than that, I wouldn't. I mean, unless you really legitimately are like, look, they've posted 130 to 150. I know says Katie, that I'm actually really below that. Like legitimately, that's a real stretch for me. Fine, you could say a lower number, but really just try to say, look, I am squarely within your range. And keep trying to say that. Try not to give that kind of number unless it's the top. If it's not the top number, I wouldn't, unless you really, really believe that you shouldn't be paid any more than 130, which is their bottom, you could say that. But otherwise, I would just say I'm definitely within the range that you posted, 130 to 150. Or if you really believe that you're at the top of their range, say I'm really at the top of your range. And to your point, you can say I'm also looking for a total cash compensation package and would love to talk to you about your benefits and really make sure that it's the right fit. But otherwise, I just wouldn't, like if you're willing, let's put it this way, if you're willing to accept 140, but you know that you could, the 150 is actually more, don't say 140 because you're right, because that's the highest they're going to give you is 140. So go for the high number if legitimately you feel like it makes sense for where you're at and your skill set.
And is there a point in the job search where, well, I'm starting to feel disheartened that I'm aiming too high and I should start looking at the jobs that pay less?
Well,
Sorry, it's
I can't give you specific advice, right? Because I don't know your situation.
No, I know we haven't.
But
gone
yeah,
that deep,
but I would say this. I mean, look at the jobs that are high if those jobs are right for you, if you really qualify for them. Don't lower your expectations and lower everything artificially because you haven't gotten those jobs yet. Employers, remember, they are risk averse. And like you said, you've been a hiring manager, you understand this. And they're gonna be reluctant, frankly, to hire you at a lower level. If you're qualified for something higher than that, they're going to consider you overqualified for that role. I absolutely would encourage you to stay at the level that's appropriate now. If you believe you're going too high, if you're saying, hey, I'm really at this level, but I keep aiming for this, and you're really just not qualified, that's a different story. But if this is your level, this is your level. I wouldn't automatically drop down just because you haven't gotten the right opportunity yet. Because Katie, as you know, there are a million reasons why people don't get the jobs that they apply for. A million things that are just subtle. You never know the competition, right? At the end of the day, only one person can get the job. And if you are one of, let's say, 5 finalist candidates and you're all extremely qualified, there are nuances and subtleties and skill set and culture fit and all these different things that might influence whether somebody gets the job or doesn't. Right. So I'd keep on going for the level that you believe that you are qualified for.
Thank you.
Sure. Ty?
What do you do if you throw a number out there initially, the HR person says, and they say, well, I think we can do better than that.
Wait a
And
second.
I've had,
you say number X and the employer says we can do higher?
yeah, I think we can do better than that. And this company is rich in benefits. And I had an interview. The hiring manager was all about culture and fit and things like that. So I don't know if they should come back with a job offer. Do I negotiate at all, or do I say, oh, I can live with this? Or
Oh,
if
so
it's
basically
like,
they're gonna be offering you more than what you initially asked for?
well, that was the initial response of the HR person. Oh, I think we can do better than that.
That's great. So you're saying that if they come back with a better number, should you continue to negotiate?
What if they come back and it's like, oh, they didn't come back better than what I said? What if they come back and
I see.
they say, okay, we're going to
Oh.
hire this guy at this number here.
Oh, the number so you
Right.
mentioned number X, they said we could do better, but they actually come back
Yeah.
down to what that's
Yeah,
different.
but
Yeah.
I want to anticipate that just in fact
Oh,
because they said
I see what you're saying. Yeah, then in that case, say, to the employer, thank you for the offer. This is great. I know that I originally mentioned number X. You had indicated that you might be able to do better than that. Can we revisit this number to see, is there anything more that we can do? Absolutely. I'd push them a little bit and then look at the total compensation. And you can even say, if this is true for you, now that we've been through, maybe in the beginning of the process, you said number X, you go through the interview, you realize it's a pretty significant job. You can say to them at the end, when they come back with number X, when we went through the interview process, I realized there was a lot of heft to this. And I believe, the position is probably, worth more than this. Is there anything we can do to lift it up a bit?
The hiring manager did say, said this is a high pressure job. The interview went well, but she said this is a stressful job.
Yeah. So then you can say that. You can simply say to
Okay.
the employer, look, you indicated this is a very stressful job. And so, I believe that the compensation should be commensurate with that. What can we do to lift it a bit higher? And they'll typically come back to most employers expect you to negotiate once. They expect
Okay.
it. Unless they come to you and say firm and final. Unless they come to you and say, look, this is the absolute top of our range, which they would probably tell you up front. They'll say, we cannot, we have pushed this, we have a limited budget, we're offering X, this is literally the most we can do. That, okay, they're telling you. But if not, if they don't say, they just say, hey, we're offering you this, that typically means they're expecting you to negotiate one time. In which case,
Well, I
you can
think
either
the
put out a number, or you can simply say, can we lift it?
Yeah, I think the only place where wiggle room is on the salary because their benefit package is pretty robust.
Okay.
That's probably the only thing. And the other comment I would have about the interview is the hiring manager was looking at all about culture. Is this person going to fit in my team? That was what it was all about. Basically, we can train the skill level.
Yeah.
We can train you the way we do things. It was all about, is this person going to be a good fit?
Yeah. Yeah. Good.
Thank
All
you.
right, yeah, you're welcome. Deborah?
Yeah, and I'm conscious of timeshare. But I wanted to ask something that's new on LinkedIn. I've noticed is there's a place where you can verify your identity, verify your past job, and you go on profiles, and I'll see this thing that says verified. Do you have a video, a tip, or is that something I should be doing?
Honestly, I didn't even know that was possible. I didn't know. When did they start doing that? I'm unaware of this.
I just
I-
verified myself because I figured it
noticed it
couldn't
too.
hurt.
How did
Yeah.
this is news to me. When did they start doing this?
I don't know, but I connected with someone who was verified.
What does that
And they
actually
said-
mean?
I don't know, but I did it through Clear.
So it's almost like ID me, you have to verify your name, I don't know if social security number, I don't remember if that's one of the options, but I noticed it on my LinkedIn, I think like 2 or 3 weeks ago, where I went in to do something and it asked me to verify my identity before I could make any changes. Which makes
Wow.
sense. I mean, I'm glad they have that in place, but because there's so many fake accounts out there, but yeah.
Honestly, I didn't. I mean, I'm glad they're doing it, but I had no idea. I'm happy to do some research, but thank you for informing me of this. I just didn't know that they would. So it's verifying your identity in general, or verifying that you worked at certain jobs?
Can I share my screen really quick, share and show you
Please.
something?
Yep.
Like this is just okay. So I just Katie and I were chatting. So like Katie has this here. She's verified their workplace, and then I've also seen this. Like it could be Katie has verified her identity. This is where I'm seeing it on a profile there.
Huh. And how do you? But how? So you're asking how to do it?
Well, I'm just saying it's a new thing, and I'm trying to like get a sense. Is it like, is this something we should be doing? Because it's kind
Why
of like
not?
I'm coming to you as like a LinkedIn expert, kind of like,
Oh yeah, I
What is
learned as
this?
to go along too. Like, thank you for this. Is actually how I learned too, because people share with me stuff. I would say this. Nothing wrong with it, right? If they're offering you if they're offering you an opportunity to increase your credibility, take it. I didn't know that they even did this. I can't imagine why it would not be a good thing to do, right? So yeah, there was one time that they added a feature years ago where, remember how they have the skill sets, right? And they said, that what they call them endorsements. That was one of those things that us LinkedIn people got hip to very quickly. And we're like, look, when people endorse you, they don't even know, they're not endorsing you for anything they necessarily know that you know how to do well. And so you can get a whole bunch of endorsements for skills that have not, like for me, people would endorse me for, temporary staffing. I don't do temporary staffing. So that kind of thing we sort of learned very quickly. I have not heard about this verification thing. I cannot imagine that's anything but perfectly fine. If I hear otherwise, I'll let you know, but I don't see why not.
thank you.
Yeah. Sure. All right, Anuja.
So my question is related to, we talk a lot about resumes, LinkedIn, things like that, is cover letter. I feel like it's, it's a process that, right, that you still have to go through. I believe in one of the previous sessions, Sherry, you had mentioned that employers still look at cover letters. They want to make sure that you've done your homework. They want to, they want to see your writing skills, your ability to respond to any specific, requirements that they're looking for in the job. But my struggle is that, you want to make sure every opportunity that you're applying for is, individualized, personalized, all that stuff. But the time it takes to do a cover letter, it's almost like one of those tasks that you don't want to do, but you have to do it. And it's just, I get sidetracked very, very easily. So what's the best methodology to follow to do a cover letter? And how specific or how in alignment should it be with the, with the job description? Should you take things from that are, that they're looking for and try to identify things that you've done in your previous roles?
Absolutely, yes. And I realize it does take a lot of time, and that's all the more reason why you only want to do this for jobs. Well, first of all, you should only really be applying for jobs that you are not only interested in, but qualified for. Okay, so I am not of the mindset to just, I think, was it Carolyn who opened up with the question early in our conversation around applying everywhere? Carolyn, I think you mentioned that. Yeah, that's just not my methodology. It's really, to me, it's all about the customization and being pinpointed, along with getting an internal champion. But when you do apply, if you really feel like you're qualified, then it's worth the time. As far as what to write, but let me just pull up a sample here. If you just guys give me just a second. Yes, you need to customize, but you can also have kind of a bit of a template that you use, so you're not starting from scratch every time. Give me a sec here. I think this is it. Let's see here. Yeah. Oh, I don't know why okay. I'm going to pull this up and so here's something you could look at. Oh, wait a second. I'm so sorry. We'll pull up a different one. You can talk amongst yourselves while I do this. Wait a sec here.
Nuja, if it helps you, I don't know if you were here when I mentioned I used ChatGPT to help write cover letters, where I put in the position description, my resume, and said, write me a cover letter. And after doing that a few times, I landed on the formula that I put in the chat.
Yeah, there is
really easier for me time-wise.
Yeah,
I missed
right.
the beginning. I missed the beginning of the call, but I know somebody else that used ChatGPT to help them write a cover letter.
People do that a lot. That actually is an option for you right now. But what you can,
Okay.
so yes, you can do that. But right now, what you want to do is you want to have a couple of opening paragraphs. Now, this particular one, the person, I wrote this for them actually, and we wrote it to speak to the mission first. So if there's something that aligns you with the mission, with the profession, with the something about the organization, you can write that in the opening paragraph. And then the second paragraph would be something along the lines of, pulling out who they need you to be and then sort of speaking to that. But most importantly, it's really about the key competencies. And so pulling out the key competencies and saying, you're looking for this, I have this. You're looking for this, I have that. It doesn't have to be super long, okay? But it does need to be super specific. And you can just, right? You can just close it out. It's not a 2-pager, just a 1-pager. But whatever you do, I would absolutely encourage you to have these bullets. Now, I know Ty likes to do something that's kind of similar. So instead of doing these bullets, I know, Ty, you do the table, right? Where it's, your qualification, your requirements, my qualifications. So you can do it in a table.
Yes.
Your requirements were in table box 1. My qualifications are this. It's the same kind of thing, whether you do in bullets or whether you do it in table, but it's a level of customization that employers are really appreciative of. Which I'm not sure if the chat.
So I will.
do.
I'm sorry. I will just take the stuff that's in the job description. I won't take everything, but sometimes I look at the qualifications and I will copy them into the box. And then I will put my experience that validates that on the other side,
Yeah,
on the
exactly right.
other side of the box.
Yeah. So in this case, you're pulling from your accomplishment stories, or you're pulling from some, some generic qualifications, but it's boom, 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 boom. So you can just have a standard template, maybe some opening paragraph about why you're aligned with the mission or with the organization or the role, why you are qualified broadly, right? In terms of what they're looking for, and then boom, 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 whatever the competencies are. Is that helpful, Anuja?
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. All right, any other last minute questions before we wrap up? Karen.
So my question is, has anyone taken their resume and done a functional resume out of ChatGPT? Has anyone tried that yet?
So Karen, I
Michelle
actually,
knows.
yeah, I actually, as a recruiter, I would caution against functional resumes. We recruiters don't align with them very well, and the reason is that in a functional resume, it doesn't state where you did what necessarily, and so we much prefer chronological. So I believe in a hybrid approach. The hybrid meaning, let me again do the pull up a sample here. So this is, as a lot of you know, I am a resume writer, and so I'm just going to pull up a sample here of what I'm talking about, and it is hybrid meaning that very similar to that cover letter I showed you, that you have, so here are the functional concepts, and they are labeled next to every single accomplishment story. So you can have a robust accomplishment story, you have the label, but it is chronological. And that's what employers like to see. They want to know where you did what, right? As opposed to just having the functional stuff at the top. And then they're like, well, this is great. She accomplished these things, but where did she do it? They really want it to be under the chronology. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go, Anuja.
Sorry. I asked the question in the chat, but I'm not sure you're able to see it, but are you able to share both the cover letter and that resume that you showed, or is that proprietary?
The kind of proprietary, yeah, I'm happy to show you sort of quickly, but yeah, it's my line of work,
Yeah.
so thank you
No
for
worries.
asking.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. All right, anything else before we wrap up? Okay, so Katie, just so you know, we'll wrap up this formal part, but then for anybody who wants to stay on the call, I lead a short prayer call for everybody, and if anybody wants to stay on, okay? Otherwise, we'll look forward to seeing folks next week.